Cool. So welcome everybody to this week's Marketing IQ Live. I'm John Wilkes. I'm head of the strategy here at Somebody Digital, and I'm joined as always by Cristiano Winkler, who is the head of digital and operations. And every 2 weeks in these workshops, we try to do a deep dive into the things that we know marketing leaders are wrestling with, from the conversations we're having with clients, the things we see on LinkedIn, the actual problems we've got ourselves. And the aim is simple: to try and pull together the tools, tactics, plays, strategies, so you can take them back to your business, and for us to distill some of the information that we're hearing, that we're learning from other people, to help kind of give you that edge, because we're seeing this from lots of different angles. Today, we're going to be talking about how our top clients are using analytics to generate revenue, because I think this is the difference that makes a difference with the CMOs and what they're actually doing. They're the ones that are, yes, using AI, yes, kind of finding AI insights in what they're doing, but the ones that are doing that fundamental work of making that data work harder, so it's not just producing nice reports, but using that data to actually generate revenue, is the difference that's making the difference, that we're going to be able to discuss here and give you some tools, hopefully, that you can kind of go back and discuss on Monday. So I think this is a quite common problem we see, right, Cristiano, where a dashboard like this and paid media are reporting one number, analytics is reporting another, and CRM is reporting another. This is difficult for the marketing teams, but it also loses so much credibility with the board.
100%. And when you look at these numbers, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the challenge that they see one thing in analytics and Google Ads is showing something completely different. And then you look at LinkedIn, you see completely different numbers as well. What's the solution for this? So we're going to try and explore some of those, some examples of some possible solutions for how you can unify your measurement and report on the actual metrics that matter.
Yes. And to say now, because I've been on lots of these webinars with other agencies and clients, we're not going to be recommending another tool here. The key, the thing that's going to make a difference, you already have access to. It's just it's the effort to do it, which is enrichment, which is feeding each system the context from the others. What that's going to mean then is that all three answers that you would have here of how many conversions we get are answering the same question the same way, because they're pulling from the same place. So the enrichment helps you with consistency of tracking, it helps you generate more revenue, and it helps with way more credibility with the board, in which we're going to go through in this presentation. So yes, you don't need more data or AI, you need your data to be working absolutely harder than what they're going now. So the best CRMs that we see have data that is, or analytics that is pulling through data from the same place. It's allowing you to have the reports and the dashboards to find the gaps in what's working, and it's data that's pulling back and feeding the algorithm on the other side. So let's kind of go through this, Cristiano, in a bit more detail of kind of what the different ways of enriching data are.
Of course. So when we say enriching data, you can approach this from several different angles. If you are doing account-based marketing and B2B, when you say enrich data, maybe you're getting a lead and you want to get more information about that lead. That is not necessarily what we are trying to explain or do here today. To us, enriching the data is to ensure that different data points have consistency and you gain more visibility, and you can actually make decisions based on what you can see is happening with your campaigns, different channels that you have running together. So you can unify all of those metrics and report the actual numbers to your board, to your CMO, or whichever other stakeholders you need to report performance to, basically. So that's what we mean, and you can approach this from several different angles, like you can see on the screen. We're gonna share a few of those examples with you guys today.
Exactly. And I wanted to pull this up because when you talk enrichment, it can mean lots of different things. I think for a lot of people, it can mean like the firmographic enrichment. As you say, you get a lead and you have other lists or sources of data where you can pull other information people know about that lead. The other is what you would call intent enrichment, which is very big in ABM, where you kind of are pulling the third party signals of identifying that account or that lead is actually out there looking for what you're selling or what you're doing. The one that we want to focus on here, because it is I hate the word, lowest hanging fruit, is outcome enrichment, because you already own this. These are the people who are already converting on your site, wherever they're converting, and it's making sure that that information of when they convert and how far they go down your funnel to if they close or not is being pulled back up to the campaigns and the accounts that are optimizing. And I've got a visual that I think kind of shows this a little bit better. So here is a very basic, yours may be more complex pipeline. So you would have clicks become leads, leads become MQLs, MQLs become SQLs, SQLs become pipeline. So often, still today, we see clients spending millions of pounds sometimes still just optimizing to the lead. We all know every lead does not become an MQL. And if the lead doesn't become an MQL, there's no value in it. And this is just seems like the message that's been hammered for so many years in marketing that I almost feel embarrassed saying it. Yet we do so many audits still, and this is still how people are measuring. I think, to be fair, people at least go into the next stage of MQL, but there's just so much money being wasted generating leads that are never going to convert and not optimizing to those that become pipeline. So kind of our thesis here of what we suggest is having that CRM data, so those leads measuring all the way down to pipeline, having that filter back up to the click. You will then start to see, okay, of all this traffic that we're getting from the different channels, what if it becomes SQL or pipeline? Now, what's consistent about those? This is the enrichment part about it. What is it about the people or the companies that are getting to that stage that is similar that we might want to double down on? The people that are only getting to MQLs and not SQLs, what's consistent about them that we might want to start to exclude them? So you can see this is why we call it outcome enrichment. It's using the information you've already got because they've already converted on your site and pushing it back up to the click. Now we're going to dig into this a little bit more. Cristiano, I don't know if there's anything you want to add before I move on.
Yes, of course, there are several elements that we need to take into account when we analyze this image that you have on your screen, for example. And we have had a couple of sessions before this one where we talk about how to optimize your campaigns specifically for MQL and pipeline instead of just leads. And I can give a few examples to illustrate why that's so important, basically. And we see this time and time again. Getting click is easy, very, very easy to get a click. Getting a lead, whatever you call a lead, is also easy. How many of those leads are actually turning into MQLs? How many of those are sales qualified? How many of those are actually helping you with pipeline? That's the real question you should be asking yourself. And then marketers would say, well, we're not responsible for what happens after we generate that lead. You are at some extent, because you can prevent certain types of leads from entering the whole funnel in the first place. When we work with B2B clients in particular, sometimes we get a lot of leads from individuals that have absolutely nothing to do with what the client or that B2B or SaaS company or tech company is actually selling, none of their products or services, for example. And if you're optimizing, if you're running a Google Ads campaign, for example, and you're optimizing for lead volume, we want the highest possible number of leads for this budget that we have available. And Google finds specific keywords or specific channels, if you're doing PMAX, for example, that get a lot of leads, Google will double down on those. And this is when you get a lot of what we call noise leads, right? Because they're not going to help you with MQLs. Maybe we're talking about students searching for specific information that is related to your product or service, but they're not going to buy anything from you. So you need to try and exclude those. So one of the elements of enrichment that we have been mentioning on all these sessions that we have been having is pull that data back from sales, understand which leads actually turn into MQLs, and stop optimizing for leads specifically. You can now optimize for MQL, and then you get feedback from sales to understand which MQLs turn into meaningful conversations so you can generate pipeline. So that's the strongest form of data enrichment that focuses on revenue and pipeline instead of just going after clicks and leads, for example. And I would say that every time we run assessments or we audit accounts, surprisingly, 8 out of 10 times they do not have any data integration and they are still optimizing for leads. And that doesn't mean that those campaigns are not actually turning into a pipeline, but more often than not, it's not actually helping with business growth. So in marketing's head, they're getting way more leads month on month. Campaigns are looking amazing, but when you look at sales and what sales has to say about that, they're like, those are not good quality. There's nothing we can do about those leads. They're not our ICP. So there's always a disconnect between marketing and sales, and hopefully with what we're going to share today, you can start filling that gap to enrich the whole funnel and ensure that you optimize not just for leads, but for MQLs and SQLs and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk to you now about 4 types of enrichment, and Cristiano's already kind of explained this one here, which we would call the enriching to the algorithm, which is the measuring as deep as possible and pulling that back to the click in which you're optimizing for. Now, if you're listening to this and saying we already optimized MQL, I will challenge anyone who's listening to this, whatever you're measuring to today, do whatever it takes to measure 1 step deeper. If you're measuring to the MQL, do whatever it takes to measure to the SAL, maybe the sales accepted lead. If you're already measuring to sales accepted, can you get to the SQL, the sales qualified lead? If you're already doing that, go 1 step deeper. So it's not just about the MQL. The MQL is not pipeline. The pipeline's not closed revenue. So the challenge is, if you're listening to this, is to do the work to measure to the step deeper. And as I said at the start, this is not another tool. There's nothing to do. It's just effort, right? It's just a bit of a pain in the ass exercise because it's often clunky and it's cumbersome and it's mixing kind of marketing and sales, and you'll probably have to do some cross-platform work. But the amount of budget that you can save when you start measuring deeper is absolutely incredible. We're working in a world that I'm not seeing clients saying we've got way too much budget, we don't know what to do with it. Most of the people we're speaking to have had reduced budgets, but their targets are still high and really high. So it's how can you get more from it? So this measuring a step deeper and enriching the algorithm is a way of doing that, because you'll start to see straight away, okay, on LinkedIn or whatever the platform is, we're getting a lot of leads, a lot of MQLs, they're getting accepted, but they're just simply not converting on the other side. So you might start to look at the campaigns, maybe there's something wrong, or maybe it's just not the quality's not there, and maybe there's another channel that is being underfunded right now that you can start to put some more effort in. So enriching the algorithm this way is the best way of doing that, and it's just pulling that CRM data back up to the paid media campaigns that are absolutely optimizing for it.
And there's one very important element here as well. But just doing that, you're going to be implementing a level of sophistication that most your competitors do not have.
Yeah.
As crazy as this sounds, every time, I just mentioned 8 out of 10 accounts we audit do not have this. And when we present, when we do workshops, when we do talks at Brighton SEO and other events, when we start talking about data enrichment, I usually ask the audience to raise their hands and show me who amongst you is actually integrating CRM to optimize for MQL and revenue instead of optimizing for leads. Less than 10% of the room will raise their hands. So if you implement this one thing, just feedback loop between marketing and sales, integrate your CRM data, Salesforce, Google Ads now has a direct and native integration with most CRM systems out there. If you do this one thing, you're going to already have a more sophisticated account and a more sophisticated setup than 80 to 90% of your competitors. So you're going to be ahead of the curve by just doing that. This is a massive competitive advantage.
That is such a good point, Cristiano. As I said this at the start, like I almost feel silly talking about this sometimes, because if you turn LinkedIn on, everyone's banging on about it, right? We optimize the MQL, everyone's nodding, everyone agrees in the comments. The realities that we're seeing is when we actually start working with a
No one
client,
does it.
we all know it. We're not saying anything that people haven't heard, but the realities of doing the work to actually measure that step deeper is just not happening. So you are absolutely having a competitive advantage over people. It's that, I'm sure there's a word for it where everybody says it, but nobody does it. Whatever the word is for that, that is what's going on with this. And after doing this for 20 years now, I can kind of say that with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Between understanding what you have to do and being able to execute it, there's always a massive gap there.
Yeah. Okay. The other point then is once you're starting to measure that step deeper, so enriching what we would call the algorithm, you can then enrich the dashboard. And you're doing a few things with this here. So by enriching the dashboard, you can then see as a collective team what's working and what's not. It's a way of getting out of these data silos, paid media having one number, the ad team having another number. So it's just having this one single source of truth dashboard allows you to be able to do that. You can see what's working, you can make better decisions, and I think more than anything, it gets the credibility with the board. So many times I see, or we work with clients, and they are at the start of the quarter or at the start of the year, I see people optimizing for things and like reporting on leads. But when it comes to the end of the quarter and they're reporting to the board, whoever it is, who's asking for revenue, and that work hasn't been done to show where the revenue is coming from, you come totally unstuck. And that's where I think marketing teams lose a lot of credibility when they're put in front of people that don't understand or don't really care about channel metrics or platform metrics. They care about the revenue, and these are the people paying for the budgets, they're paying for the wages, the salaries, they're being upheld to the board themselves. So I think it's measuring this way and measuring deeper just gives you so much more credibility when you're going to the board. I've got a kind of example of what I mean by that here. So this is a oversimplified version, but if you can put something like this in front of the board where they can see, okay, let me pull back one. Another reason I'm saying this is the board can be as guilty as anybody saying we need more leads, we need more MQLs, or whatever the thing is. So I think by enriching the dashboard, like I'm saying here as well, it helps you educate the board as well, or the people in the room who aren't in the marketing data, that every lead or every MQL doesn't become pipeline, and it lets them see the journey. So I think by measuring deeper, like we're explaining here, to be able to go from lead, you can see the drop off between leads and MQLs, between MQLs and SAL. So if you can have a nice visualization for the board like this, it really helps them start to understand how it works, or when you want to cut something or increase the budget in something. You can also add, like I've got on this bottom right corner, you can then start to show by each of these metrics how they're improving over time. So this kind of one across the top is a snapshot, which I don't think is particularly useful. It's just a visual for this. But in this bottom right corner where you can see we've got the by each funnel stage, the MQL or the SQL, how is that trending up or down? Then you can start to talk the story about the work you've been doing, what you've cut, what you've added to. So it helps them understand at the level that they care about what marketing is actually doing, without kind of getting stuck in the details of channel metrics or things that don't get just don't get the attention of them. Cristiano, do you have anything to add on this one before I move on?
Absolutely. Knowing your audience and speaking the language that your audience understand is paramount here. And we're all guilty of that, right? We're managing Google Ads, LinkedIn, or whichever other channels, and we want to show the amazing things we have done to increase CTR. We lowered the cost per click. Our cost per acquisition, which in this case could be cost per lead, is lower as well. We doubled our impressions. The reality is the board doesn't care about any of that. Those metrics, those KPIs tell you how your campaigns are running and performing. That doesn't matter to the board. Now imagine the following scenario. You have the exact same budget, but you're supposed to achieve a 20% increase in performance. By performance, we're talking about pipeline from digital marketing activities, or MQLs from digital marketing activities. You need to understand, as per the example you had on the screen a few moments ago, how many of those leads turn into MQLs? What is the percentage of those MQLs that turn into SQLs? How many SQLs turn into opportunity? What is the average ticket size? What's the lifetime value? That's a language that your board will appreciate. So you're talking efficiencies here, right? I know we didn't have more budget, but we were able to hit our 20% target because we were more efficient in the way we were managing campaigns. We observed, as an example, that between MQLs and SQLs, we had a conversion rate of 10%. Then I had a conversation with sales to try and understand what are the topics that are more relevant to the people that they're talking with. What are the pain points that are usually the ones that drive SQL to pipeline? And then we can make changes on our campaigns to address those topics and those pains in particular. Then we're going to get more leads and MQLs about those topics and about those pain points in particular. We expect the rate between MQL and SQL to increase because we're being more relevant. That's a much more interesting story for you to tell your board, how we're being more efficient. And then you can tell your board, we're focusing on this topic and pain point in particular, but we have this whole range of products and services that we offer that we are not targeting. And this is how you can ask for more budget to experiment, to do something different. That's the language the board wants to hear. Not how many clicks, impressions, or CTR you got. What are you doing to ensure you're bringing the right type of customers that will turn into MQLs, SQLs, and pipeline for the business? That's the story they want to hear. That's what they're interested in. And I assure you, if you come with that narrative and speak their own language, and you need to ask for more budget to try different campaigns and show examples of what you have been doing, show them you understand their point of view, what they expect to see, is going to make your life much, much easier in terms of asking for additional budget or even prevent budget cuts, which has been a reality for the last 3 years.
Yep, absolutely. And I think another, I'm not going to kind of hammer the home about this is going to turn into a dashboard conversation, but we are talking about enrichment, and enrichment is about managing forward. I always think it's about being able to get better conversions going forward. It's about able to manage the board going forward. It's about being able to manage your team going forward. And some of the other things that you can do when you enrich the data properly, I think this kind of previous view here is top level, not that useful. When you can split that out by channel, it's useful as well, because you might say that actually paid ads is doing really well. We're getting loads of MQLs, but you can see on this example here, we've got it split out by LinkedIn, Google, and AI. I mean, I'm sure the board are saying at some level, what are we doing with AI? Where are we appearing? Blah, blah, blah. We all know that one. When you can kind of visualize it by channel like this as well and say, okay, these channels are doing great, we're getting MQLs, but it's just not turning into business. And then you can start to put the story on why that's happening, right? And investigate it a little bit more, but just kind of keeping it at this level. But I think I also want to add in here as well that this is assuming that it's just one channel doing all the work, right? That is not the world we live in. We live in a very fragmented marketing environment right now. So to be able to have the visualizations, this is just an example. I've kind of removed any clients on from here, but where you can see the different touch points by the different channels for clients as well. So you can start to show the board and your team, okay, how are the channels actually working together? So when you are looking from a data enrichment perspective, you might see, okay, from a direct revenue perspective, this channel is not converting, so to speak, but we can see that it is consistently part of the buying cycle, especially if you're dealing with B2B. It's long, it's complex, there's often multiple people. So when you can kind of stitch the pieces together and offer a view like this on top of the data enrichment, it just makes the team so much more effective. It makes spending more effective, and it just adds so much more credibility when talking to other departments in the business, which is always a bugbear of mine, that marketing doesn't, I often feel, doesn't have the right seat at the table and talking the right level in revenue, like they're a true business owner, not just kind of doing marketing over there. It's something I'm really strong about us as marketers communicating in that way. Is there anything you wanted to add onto this one, Cristiano?
Absolutely, we have to be careful with one thing in particular, and we need to remember that the journey is not linear. It was never linear. And if you're not familiar with the concept of the messy middle, I highly recommend you go on Google and search for the messy middle, which is a report that Google released a few years ago that explained that what we know as the marketing funnel, top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, it was never that, right? Individuals, accounts will jump in to the funnel at different stages and disappear and come back. So you will require several touches. Now imagine the following scenario. You're looking at your NICE reports and you can see that your LinkedIn conversion rate is 0.2%. Your Google Ads paid media or non-brand is 1.2%. Your Meta is 0.7%. Programmatic is 0.1%. And you look at all those numbers and you say, okay, these other channels are not working well. Let's stop all those activities and let's focus on Google Ads only. That's the trap, right? Because you're analyzing one channel in isolation. Digital marketing doesn't work like that. It has not worked like that in a very long time. And the AI era has surfaced the need for you to measure the multi-touch and understand the full journey, because we've lost basically 58 to 60% of the clicks from searches now. 68%, 58% of clicks end without, of searches, sorry, end without clicks. So this is the scenario. You have a Meta or a LinkedIn ad. I'm scrolling, I'm on my LinkedIn app and I see your brand. I don't take any action. I don't click, I don't engage, but I remember you. This is now at the back of my brain. And I see it again another day. And a few weeks later, I face a problem that you have the solution for, either product or a service. And I will remember you. And then I'll go on Google and I'll search for your name, or I will vaguely remember who you were and what are the best companies for X, Y, and Z. And then you're going to see the results. You're going to relate to the logo. You're going to relate to the brand. And then you're going to click and you're going to convert. You're going to ask for a demo session or etc. If you go to analytics and you don't do the path to conversion analysis or the multi-touch analysis, you only look at the last click, you would think that Google is responsible for that conversion that will turn into an MQL or an SAL. But that's not the case. You have interacted with ads. You haven't clicked, but you have seen ads. Maybe you read a blog post. So we need to be very, very careful here not to fall into the trap of only measuring the last click. Last click attribution is that. It's been that for a very long time. You need to measure every single touch, everything that happens with all campaigns, and try and find correlations. If individuals have read blogs, for example, how likely are they to convert? We just did this analysis for one of our clients. We have identified that a subdomain that provides documentation and help, meaning informational content, individuals that have been to that subdomain are 9 times more likely to convert on a demo request. That's massive. It understands that if you educate your audience first, then they will be more likely to request a demo, which is a highly qualified lead that will, in most cases, turn into an MQL and possibly business. So we need to be very, very careful in the way that we analyze the data and analyze channels. You cannot look at channels in isolation anymore. You need to analyze your whole marketing, digital marketing activity, and the correlation between all different types of engagement, video, views, impressions, all the way down to MQL and SQL, to understand how those campaigns, how those channels interact, and how the user behavior, in this case, when they interact with those ads and channels, is influencing the MQL and pipeline.
Yep, absolutely. We're at the end of the 30 minutes. I'm going to talk a few more minutes into the question time because I think it's kind of useful for us to go through this last bit. So the other enrichment step, so we've talked about enrich the algorithm, we talk about enrich the dashboard, now we talk about enrich the click. And what we mean by this, it's particularly useful in B2B, is conversion rate optimization, personalization, the stuff you already know about that person, that customer before they click your site. Use that to your advantage, especially in B2B. So if you know if they've been to the site before, what they've looked at, can you instantly filter the site to the vertical you know that they're in? Can you filter that to the category that you know that they're in? Can you filter it to whatever you know about them to make it more personal? You already have this data. This is very cost effective thing to do when it comes to conversion, when it comes to converting traffic. If I think as a full service digital marketing agency, which we are, the program that outperforms all other programs from a return on investment perspective is conversion rate optimization, which is ultimately making more of the traffic that is already coming to your site convert. And the enriching of that click is so powerful in doing that, especially in B2B. So the enrichment on that side as well is just something that I really encourage anybody listening to this to go away and do straight away, to just use that information to create a way more personalized experience, to get to the person to where they want to go more quickly, because you know what they've looked at before is going to make such a huge difference to your business. The final point that I kind of want to hammer on here as well is this from Deloitte that we've mentioned on a few others, that 40% plus of all AI automation projects will fail by 2027. And kind of in this is kind of bundled, if you read this report, like data traffic, data enrichment projects as well, because what was the most important thing 20 years ago is still the most important thing now, even with AI, and that is good analytics and data setup, the robustness of the data, the granularity of the things that you're tracking, the data governance that you have around it is so incredibly important in what you're doing. So I think the point here is we're talking about really cool data enrichment things to do, but it all just boils down to the fundamentals of having a strong analytics setup, not just slapping the latest AI tool on top of it and getting AI insights from data which is fundamentally shit from the start. I think it's really important to have that setup. Would you agree, Cristiano?
100%. There's one thing in particular in this slide that I absolutely love. Automating broken data doesn't fix the data, it makes the mistakes faster. You're basically going to fail a lot faster without even knowing, and it's downhill from there. So data consistency, to be able to trust the numbers, this is paramount. It is the single most important thing that you need to do to ensure that you have data consistency, because then you can make decisions based on the right data, and those will be the best decisions. Those will be the right decisions.
Yep. Okay, so that's us. So in total, reports do not make money on their own. They're just standalone reports. It's just data. It's the enriched data that does the work, that makes the money for you. So stop looking at what happened and start feeding the next decision is the absolute best way to get the most from your data. So I hope you learned something from this. Maybe you're thinking, yeah, I've heard this all before. Are you actually doing it? I think that is the thing. And I would challenge you to, wherever you're measuring to right now, to do the work, to measure to the step deeper, because it will just lift the performance of all your channels. Are there any questions before we wrap up for the evening? I don't think they are, Cristiano. I think we did a good job explaining it. Nobody has any questions, so we will.
I hope so.
Yes, we will wrap this up. We will send this video link out to everybody as well, and we'll speak to you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Cristiano.
Thank you, John.